Hello, everyone. So
Huh?
excited to be here today for another episode of the Mindful Constitution podcast. And I'm really excited today because this is a little bit more of a personal episode and guest. I have on Alexandra Carrier, who is a tarot card reader, a mom of one going on two, a
Crazy.
fellow holistic, sober curious, booze free babe, and also my niece, which is
Most importantly.
most importantly, she's my niece. And so the fun part about this episode is that we're actually both in our third trimester. And so, yeah, pat that belly.
At that belly girl.
So we thought it would be really special to share, our thoughts heading into motherhood for the first time on my end, second time on her end, and just how pregnancy has been going, and also just about her sober curious path, her experience as a mom so far, and just having a fun chat. We basically grew up like sisters, wouldn't you say?
I definitely say so, for
Yeah.
sure.
We're
You were
only
right. I just thought of you like that. I never got a sister, so you're the closest thing I have to a sister.
You're like,
For
so too bad.
sure. I got three brothers, and my aunt is my sister. So
I know it was so weird growing up when I was 7 and you're 5. I'm like, this is my niece.
I know people are like, "You mean your cousin?" I'm like, "No, my aunt." Okay, like
No, honey, I don't mean
cooler than a cousin. Okay.
that. That's right. So yeah, I know we have like so much to talk about. I definitely want to dive into all the wisdom that I can pick your brain for, which is so fun because even though you're slightly younger, you were the first to have a baby. So I've been asking her tons and tons of questions. Also, first to kind of like stop drinking. I followed in your footsteps after, but for a while I was like, what do you mean you're not drinking by choice? I was like the annoying person that's like, just have a drink. And now
No,
I'm
you
sober
were
clean.
never. You were never like that. You were always supportive, always.
But yeah, how for starters, let's talk about pregnancy, shall we? So
We
we're due
shall.
3 days apart.
Isn't that so cool? Should we tell them the story about?
Yes, we should about the pregnancy
That's a
test.
really cool story.
Yes, tell the story.
Okay, so we got a text like with a picture of your pregnancy test, I think, and you announced it, and we were like, "Oh my god!" Immediately called you, and I talked to you, and you mentioned that your cousin was also pregnant, and I was like, man, I'm almost like kind of jealous. Like, I'm so excited for them, but I'm like, I wish I was pregnant. And I was like, I'm just going to take a test because, like, as a joke, I was like, how funny would that be if we were all pregnant? So I took the test and then I left it on the counter and forgot about it. And then in the morning, I went back and checked and I was pregnant.
Yeah.
And I had like no idea. I would have not even known I was pregnant unless you guys had told us you were also pregnant.
I know that's so funny too because I remember starting to already harass you about trying for a second pregnancy as soon as possible so that we could line it up, at least close together. And you're like, yeah, no, I'm still breastfeeding slightly. Like, it definitely not. And too soon, maybe in a few months. And you called me the next day and I ignored it because I was doing something. And I was like, oh, she's calling me. Gonna be calling me every day now that I'm pregnant.
Yeah.
And then you're like, you need to call me.
Emergency.
You're like,
Emergency.
SOS.
That was so wild. It definitely was meant to be, for sure. I think we're meant to have.
Yeah, our two little spirits jumped in together. Like, you better go with me down that hellhole. I ain't doing this alone.
Yeah.
So yeah, a really funny story. But How have you been feeling with your pregnancy, this pregnancy versus the first one? And I have a million questions to ask, but start with that.
Okay, well, I mean, this pregnancy versus the last pregnancy, I really got to enjoy my first pregnancy a lot more because I did not have a toddler who needed my attention every second. So it's a little more exhausting this time around, but it's just as special. And, honestly, I've been pretty lucky. I just had like nausea and like exhaustion in the beginning of this pregnancy. And it's just kind of gotten easier as the pregnancy's gone along.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, no, I feel like I've been pretty lucky with like not having terrible pregnancy symptoms other than just feeling like I have PMS all the time.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if it's like mama bear hormones or what, but my patience, it's like non-existent now.
Low
That's
tolerance
probably
threshold.
yeah, that's my worst pregnancy symptom. And same with my last pregnancy, honestly, But the biggest difference is just, it being a little more physically demanding having a toddler.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I bet.
Yeah.
Ooh, that would be hard right about now.
Yes.
Vita is enough effort for me. When
Oh
you
my God.
think of like your highs and your lows, or the rose and the thorn of pregnancy in general, not this one specifically, but just over the past two pregnancies, what was like the highs? What are the highs and the lows for you?
Well, let's start with the lows because why not? And
You're like low tolerance threshold.
yeah, definitely the low patience tolerance threshold, as you said, for sure. I would definitely have to say the nausea for me is probably the thorn because I'm just like prone to nausea. And then throughout pregnancy, I'm just like nauseous all the time. Doesn't matter if it's morning, noon, or night or whatever. So that's like the thorn. And the rose is definitely like getting to feel your baby like move around inside your body and see them move around and just like, getting to like connect with them more and more as
Mm-hmm.
the months go on is probably like the rose. And
Yeah.
then getting to meet them, it's just like so cool. So,
I know. I still feel it just feels really surreal still that there's going to be a baby here in a few weeks.
right?
Yeah,
Me too.
the mood swings were definitely the thorn for me, especially in the first trimester. I
Yeah.
think people talk about it, but maybe I wasn't paying attention, or maybe they don't talk about it enough. But yeah, the
Yes.
first trimester was pretty brutal because also, in our relation, yeah, John was adjusting to the idea of pregnancy too. It's both of our first times. Meanwhile, you're
Oh,
not showing yet or anything. I think I called you quite a bit in the beginning.
yeah. Same here.
Like,
It's
I need help.
SOS.
I'm feeling sociopathic and borderline
Basically.
homicidal.
Yeah, I mean, for sure. I had those intense mood swings too. I'm not gonna lie. And even still now, I'm like, sometimes it doesn't take much for me to like, what
Pop
you say? To
off.
me? Yeah.
You're like, what'd you say to me?
Did you just look at me weird, lady at the grocery store?
Your head starts spinning.
Yeah.
I know it is. It's crazy. Mine definitely. It was funny. It was just as soon as the second trimester started. It was like the clock ticked second. The clock struck second. I'm like second semester, second trimester, and
Basically.
I felt much more balanced mood wise. But yeah, in the first one made up for it because it was psycho. But yeah, what do you think are some of the things, or one thing at least, that surprised you most about pregnancy that you feel like people don't talk about enough?
Probably what we were just talking about, the mood swings. Like, and there are just like so many, I just feel so emotional. Like, and I don't mean like where I'm not a big crier, honestly. I mean, in general, I'm more emotional to where like I just have so many emotions about things where I'm like, well, I'm just feeling so much and it's like so intense right now. And like, I don't know why, and
Yeah.
then it'll fade or whatever. But yeah, definitely the emotional aspect probably doesn't get talked about enough. I think people talk about how much it like physically sucks, like, and that's to be expected and everything. And it does. There's moments where you're like really uncomfortable and it's like, oh, but mainly probably like the hormonal like highs and lows, like
Mhm.
emotionally
Yeah.
for me personally. Not everybody's different, not everybody's gonna have such,
I think we're pretty emotional folks in our family too, so we're
and we
deep
use the word
feelers.
feeling a lot.
Yeah. Feelings run deep around these parts
Yeah.
anyways. Yeah, totally. That was a big one. Um, I think, what do I think was most surprising? I
Yeah.
think what's most surprising is all of the things that you think you have to do, like going through the pregnancy process, that when you actually research, many of them
Totally.
aren't necessary, as like they're not mandatory, maybe not even as necessary as you think. There's lots of advocating that is good to do for yourself throughout pregnancy, whereas I think a lot of people just kind of do what they're told and go through the system of it all. But when you actually start to research, it can be pretty eye-opening what they recommend, and things that are kind of even dated or not even shown to be really needed, but it's just done procedurally. That was eye-opening to me, where I was just really surprised by that for sure.
I second that 1000%. Yeah.
So do your research out there, people.
Yeah, don't do anything that you feel like is slightly uncomfortable because there's usually a reason why. And yeah, do your research if it feels uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. What surprised you most as a new mom, since you've already been around this?
Well, I'm still a new mom. I'm
Yeah.
still a new mom. Let's get that straightened on there. It's only two, so I think like the biggest shift though is just like, you just like see life through a whole nother lens once your baby is born because, everything everybody says is so true. Like, when your baby's born, your heart grows like another size. And also, like, your heart is just like outside of your body, like you just like care so much about this other little person. And like you want everything and more for them. And sometimes it's like hard. It was really hard for me to like come to terms with like, I gotta like take care of me to like take care of them, That was really hard. But
Prioritizing yourself.
yeah, prioritizing yourself. And not everybody's going to have that struggle. That was just my personal struggle with that for sure. And I think I had a lot of like anxiety about like safety and not safety, but just like, anxiety, something's going to happen to your baby and like you have to be there every second, I had that like kind of just like going in the back of my mind, probably from my own childhood stuff,
Yeah.
But it subsided and I hit rock bottom and I was like, okay, I got to take care of myself now.
Yeah, you're like, A, prioritize myself, and B, not go to worst case scenario all the time, which can be supported by taking care of ourselves first, because we're not always on the fritz emotionally and kind of in a more balanced, resilient mindset. But I also feel like that does touch upon what I wanted to ask you about too, in terms of what cycles you want to break, because I feel like we both had a lot of destabilizing experiences as children. And so a backstory for why maybe you feel that way more magnified in terms of hypervigilance is trauma and childhood trauma. And so then when you have your own kids, you're kind of operating on high alert. And when you think of like your childhood and having kids of your own, what cycles felt really important to break for you?
Oh my gosh, well, a lot of them. And
Mhm.
luckily, I started breaking them a while before I had kids.
Yeah,
So,
you have wait to experiment on.
luckily, I had a little head start. So, definitely, there's a lot of like, with my parents, with like my immediate mother and father, there was like a lot of rage and just a lot of like, yeah, a lot of rage, I guess. And so,
Emotional turbulence, kind of.
yeah, emotional turbulence for sure. And I don't want to say like I'm perfect or whatever, but I'm definitely not like a rageaholic like my parents. I can react passionately at times, and that's like my Achilles heel.
Mhm.
And so that's something that I definitely wanted to break with him. I don't want him to have either of my children to have to be around, and I don't want to pass that on. So I'm always really I just want to be as gentle with him as I can within reason, like it's really important for me to explain to him like if I am in a bad mood or if I am like cranky about something or sad, like I try to be very honest and say, Mommy is feeling sad right now, or I'm feeling this, I'm feeling that. And like I try to just tell him what I need to do to like self-regulate, and then I'll do that. And it's really neat. Now I see him doing it back to me, he's like, I'm very mad. Like I have to go like
I have to go
sip.
take a moment.
Yeah. Myself, Mom, myself. That's really cool to see that, but there's just so many things like there was a lot of like disordered eating in my house, and so I try to just kind of like really not like just kind of really give him free rein. I just give him healthy options, but just really like taking 20 steps back and giving him more free rein to eat
Hmm.
what he wants when he wants,
Yeah,
and
definitely. And it's kind of the I feel like the embodiment of breaking cycles is just really rooted in that self-awareness of how your experience impacted you and knowing
yeah.
like, okay, wow, because so many people have like these childhoods where shitty stuff happens or they're exposed to toxic behaviors, but it's never brought to their conscious awareness. And so you just repeat what you know.
Yes.
And so,
Another thing I'm really trying to focus on is really being very present with him in every moment, like
mhm.
and like letting him have like all of me within reason, and like I said, it can't be every moment because
Mhm.
he would love that, but
Yeah,
it's
which is
not.
why he got the boot for this
Yeah.
podcast recording. You're
Yeah.
like, you gotta go, Dad.
Yeah. Gotta
Yeah,
go.
I know it is. It's hard work to become aware of your programming and then to break it. And I definitely have that reactivity button too, where I have to work on my patience a lot. And I think a lot of it just has to do with PTSD, honestly, whereas like
Yes.
you're just hyper vigilant and kind of always in fight or flight mode. And so it just programs you to be much more reactive, which I can only imagine that's truly tested with kids.
Yes. And I am not an angel every time, like I'm learning. I try to do as like the gentle parenting approach as possible, but everybody has their moments, and I think it's all about like how you recover and like take ownership of your own emotions and your reactions and stuff, and just like I think it makes a big difference for kids,
Yeah,
honestly.
totally. Modeling. And I was just
Yeah.
talking to, I did another podcast recording with one of these friends of mine who does mindfulness based stress reduction, but she also has two kids about the same age apart as you will. And she was just saying, like, I still lose my shit. Like,
Yeah.
I teach mindfulness, but I still lose my shit. We're all human. It's more weird when you see people try never to lose their shit with their kids, and it's just like this like gentle robotic parenting. And it's okay. That doesn't seem really healthy either, in showing them how to like express negative emotion, or if you do express negative emotion, it's not realistic. And it's like, sometimes we all lose our shit. It's about like how you take ownership of it, how you recover, how you model effective communication or conflict resolution, things like that. Because I've even
kids to see other people get upset, and like, exactly what you say, like model, like teaching by modeling. It's important because they're going to go out in the real world. They're going to get upset,
or people are going to be upset with them. And it's like, they're not going to be like, listen, little, all the time. So I find like it's always somewhere in the middle with a lot of these things, right? Is like using your own intuition and rational, like critical thinking to be like, okay, obviously we're not going to be perfect all the time. So how can we best handle it when we do fuck up as parents and do lose our shit, which will probably happen occasionally from time to time.
Sometimes multiple times a day. It just depends on the day.
Yeah. A little here, a little there, that's awesome. And then another question I have about parenting is, what has with Sebastian and with, the future baby, what qualities feel most important to instill in your kids along the way?
I definitely think being gentle, like with yourself, being gentle with other people, choosing to always be compassionate. Those are definitely things I want to instill in my children, and that I hope that they get. And they can take out there in the real world. Because you know what? I don't think there's enough of that, like in, the world.
Hell no, there's not. Not even close. It's scary out there.
It is. I think that would solve a lot of the world's problems if we just were a little more, first of all, gentle with ourselves. And then ultimately, when you're gentle with yourself, you'll be gentle with other people. But it's just as important to be kind to other people. And, everybody matters. And I want my kids to know that everybody matters equally,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, what you said too about just even before breaking cycles within ourselves, like when we have kids, I think is such a beautiful way to like translate that, because when you're able to kind of break through some of your subconscious patterns that are self-sabotaging or not gentle with yourself, like you said, disordered eating, or kind of tendencies towards like emotional turbulence or rage, then you heal that first within yourself, and then you can help break that cycle in your kids, and then hopefully they can go out into the world with more self-awareness, self-love, kindness, compassion towards themselves and other people. But it seems like a lot of people don't do that inner work before they have kids, and so it just continues on these toxic patterns that lead the way instead of some of the positive traits that we want to pass on.
Totally. I think that happened with me.
Yeah. I know. I had to stop the cycle breaker. Or you were the cycle breaker. It's hard work.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I've thought about that a lot. John and I have had that conversation about like what's most important for us to pass along to our kids. And I'm always big with integrity, I think is a big one, like you
definitely embody that.
Yeah, what you're doing when no one's watching is just as important as when there's a million people watching. And how do you align with your integrity on a daily basis? And also free thinking, because it is scary out there sometimes to see how many people will just go along with the crowd rather than with their integrity or with their own inner knowing. And so I really want to raise kids that are curious and inquisitive and just don't just accept everything blanketly, like do see how it aligns with yourself before you just accept something because it's the popular opinion.
Yeah. I like that. I'm going to add that to my answer too.
I'll add kindness too. I guess that's a good one to have on. Compassion, kindness, self-love, all that stuff too.
A lot of these answers, I'm like, I feel like, Nanny kind of like did instill a lot of those things. And,
Yeah, I think so too. And I feel really lucky in terms of generational trauma because I feel like she was kind of a cycle breaker in her own family. And I mean, she had her own issues with like drinking, and a lot of the trauma that I experienced in my life was more like circumstantial with the car accident and just traumatic experiences. And so, but like looking back on it all, I feel like it, and maybe you feel the same way, even though yours was more directly inflicted upon you by your parents. Yeah, like I do look back and I'm grateful for the experiences of challenge that I had because I don't know, it's definitely catalyzed like a lot more growth in me than I think I would have otherwise. Although I'm sure most people wouldn't have signed up for a lot of those experiences, but
of course.
Yeah.
Maybe we did spiritually,
Yeah, maybe I did. I had a lot to learn in this life, so I was like, lay it on me, spirit guides.
We all signed up at the same time. We were like, okay, we'll take that. As long as we can be together. Okay.
Fine. I always envision when people jump in, like how they say that your soul chooses the experiences that you have in order to learn the lessons you need to learn this time around or whatever, which I do think I believe it. And I also think our perspective must be slightly skewed when we're like up there choosing, like, human experience. Like, how bad can it be? And then when you're doing it, why did I sign up for that?
When we're up there and everything's all peaceful.
Yeah.
And come down to reality.
Right. And it's just,
what the hell did we do? Oopsies.
Like, better be evolving a lot. And with all of these little challenges I chose for myself. Right. So I wanted to talk about the topic of disordered eating because I know that was actually something that was like kind of passed along to you that you saw growing up. And I wanted to talk about how you broke free of that and found a healthy relationship with yourself and your body and getting out of that cycle.
Okay, it kind of started, I think I always had a weird relationship with eating and with food, just kind of like, I just probably inherited it from both my parents, but mainly from my mom, and then I started really having a problem with food, and I started like binging and purging when I was like 13, and it just was like a habit. Like a bad habit, obviously, nothing that I was like happy or like proud of or whatever, but it was a habit that I had. And then it just kind of like really like spun out of control into like a full blown addiction for like 3 months or so. And it was crazy. I've never really been addicted to anything. And if you have been addicted to something at any point, you don't want to do it. You want to stop. You're like, oh, I don't want, this is terrible. I'm never going to do this again. And it was just kind of like, it started as like a self-soothing thing, like when I was younger, and as weird as that sounds. And then, like I said, it just like full blown, like spun out of control. And I just was like really searching for an answer because I had not wanted to have this bad habit for a long time. I had been wanting to get rid of it. And then it just like I said, it just got out of control. It was like coming to a head. Mm-hmm. And so I was searching for like any kind of answer. And there, like at this time, there was not a lot out there on the internet or really like in books or anything that was really very helpful. And I just really kind of did what I felt intuitively was the best option for me, which was like I turned to plant medicine. And because I noticed that like anytime I would take plant medicine, like mushrooms or whatever, I didn't want to like engage in that behavior, and like it was not something I desired at all. There was no urge. The urge was gone. So I was like, well, and at that time I was like 23, 22, and there wasn't all these documentaries about like mushrooms or plant medicines at all, like there are today. So just like intuitively, I was like, well, I think I'm just gonna like try that. So I did that. I like microdosed like every day for like a while. And then like it just became more and more undesirable, and like all this like programming, I really did a lot of like self work with myself. Like I didn't really seek therapy, which for me worked, but I mean, I would recommend always, getting therapy anytime you can, especially surrounding an eating disorder. But it just like kind of unraveled everything. And I remember like I went, and this might sound cheesy, but I think like the last thing that happened was like I went and got Reiki from my Reiki teacher. And I really, I like did a lot of like prayer work afterwards, and really just was trying to find an answer. And then I found, it sounds so stupid, but I found this like raw vegan diet like online. And I tried it not because like that's how I wanted to live for the rest of my life, but I thought I need to only put things in my body that I don't want to throw up, basically, that I'm like feel safe with just eating and not like purging afterwards. And so I did that for 6 months. And then I just like really was committed to like the veganism thing for a while, for a lot of years. And I was already vegetarian at that point. But that really is kind of like what did it for me, was like mushrooms and raw veganism.
You're like, this may be sound non-conventional, which definitely is. And by the way, we're not providing medical advice here.
No.
We're just sharing.
This is what worked for me.
Yeah, we're simply sharing experiences and storytelling. So, of course, if you are struggling with an eating disorder, this is just one version of someone's experience. But it is wild, the microdosing with psilocybin and how much research is now being done on it. I have a friend who's a therapist who's really into it, and also talking about mostly psychiatric disorders. I've seen a lot about, depression and bipolar and schizophrenia and stuff, that microdosing can be helpful. And so it's interesting to think of how that would be translated into eating disorders, which do have a layer of, mental health, like obviously.
Yeah, huge. And I'm not like, now I don't do the act of the binging and the purging, and I have a much healthier relationship with food and like a respect and all that. But I think it probably is like a lifetime kind of a thing to unlearn, and to heal, honestly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and just to, like we talked about before, that awareness allows you to make changes, but it also allows you to stay on top of it and realize, okay, that was a tendency I was programmed with that I really have to be cognizant of, sneaking in weak moments. I imagine it's very much like struggling with any type of addiction, where you have to create pillars of support for yourself and create a life that's not like constantly challenging you, in order to stay in a healthy space with it all. And
it's weird because it's not like a drug where you're like, it's illegal and like you don't really have access to it all the time, but because it's something you have to do every day, all day.
Yeah.
You have to eat, you have to go to the grocery store, you have to buy food, you have to be around food. And so that's where like the, being gentle with yourself kind of really comes in for me, and just like, eating things that I feel good about.
Right.
Is what's
Yeah.
important to me now.
Yeah, I wanted to ask actually, like, how has your approach to health been shaped by that? And kind of what you said sounds like the main sort of principles of your approach is just really focusing on being gentle with yourself, having
Yeah.
compassion, forgiveness, and focusing on translating that to your choices around food too.
Yeah, I think my approach to health is definitely just trying to be always picking the gentle option, either for my body or for the environment, like where it comes from. And like, I definitely, that overflows into motherhood, like with what, any choices that I make in regard to like how I mother my kid or what, I'm feeding my child or emotionally, physically, whatever. I just think that being as gentle with myself and like gentle with the planet as I can be, that's what makes me feel good. And
Mhm.
that's when I think I'm like, that's what helps guide me to be like my most healthiest self, I guess.
Mhm.
Personally.
Yeah. That definitely, well, obviously, having known you my whole life pretty much, that definitely resonates because except for that first year, you weren't yet. I held it down without you. But it is something that resonates just in observing the way you move through life as you're someone who treads very lightly, through life. And you have just like something soft about who you are as a person. And I think that makes absolute sense that your approach to health would also be something soft and gentle on yourself. And especially coming from such like a harsh kind of space growing up, it's like really creating an environment of a soft place to land for yourself sounds like it's been the most healing for you.
For sure. Yeah, that's like the key word of my life now is gentle.
Gentle, yeah, what a toddler. Gentle, gentle.
Gentle hands, gentle everything. But yeah, no, I definitely, it's like you said, there was a lot of the opposite of gentle. So I'm like, now I'm trying to like make up for it, I think.
Yeah.
I'm trying. I'm doing okay, I think.
Yeah, you're crushing it.
Thank you. Love
Crushing
you.
it, honey. Well, okay, back. I wanted to actually, I forgot to ask this question earlier. Speaking of toddlers and gentleness, was what are your top tips for maintaining sanity with toddlers? And then we can dive into sober curiosity too. Because
Okay, well, let's see. My top tips. I would say, um, not that I'm a master of the tips with the toddlers and sanity, but yeah, definitely
really
circling
take
back.
care.
Yeah, daycare. Definitely circling back to like taking care of yourself first, no matter how hard it is, like prioritizing your own sanity and not and doing everything you can to not feel guilty about it. That's my number one tip. And so for me, that looks like, having him in daycare like one day a week right now and um, really fighting for more days of daycare. But if anybody out there has a kid in daycare, sometimes, the wait lists are crazy and all that. But yeah, so for me, I have my son in daycare one day a week, and that really helps, me be able to just focus on what I need to focus on and having a break. And so that might look like, having somebody watch your child or, family member, or have your husband watch them while you go out and do whatever you want, or your partner, or whoever. Um, Another tip is sometimes, you know what, you got to just turn the TV on and just like put a movie on and, just like don't feel bad about it. It's
Yeah,
okay.
better
It's
than
okay.
losing your shit.
Yeah, it's okay if they watch The Jungle Book, or they watch like Finding Nemo for like an hour and a half while you just like meditate or do whatever you need to do, like
Yeah.
making sure that your kid is safe and okay while you like just do you for a minute. That's totally fine and there's nothing to feel bad about.
Yeah, I that makes so much sense. It's like, why would you, and obviously I don't have any clue what I'm in for except for asking you a million questions, but I also just feel like there is sometimes that pressure to be perfect, no screen time, no fast food, this, that, or whatever, which obviously we're both very healthy minded people who, like you said, you want to be present with your kids. It's not all or nothing. You can create space for yourself and maybe do something every once in a while like that. Let your kid watch TV for a little bit, if it means whatever, or a lot of it, if it's going to help you keep your sanity, because what is the alternative to be some neurotic mom that's like, I have to be perfect all the time?
Yeah, you can't be. And I thought I did. Like, I thought like I needed to like tend to every little like thing that he wanted or needed because he couldn't do it for himself. And like I lived that for like a long time, and it almost like made me have like a nervous breakdown.
You're like, me.
Yeah, I'm like, that's not possible. You cannot do that. You can't satisfy anybody's needs all the time, no matter how freaking old they are. So, and I mean, like, balancing that, like, so you take time for yourself to do what you need, and, like, whatever that means, whatever that looks like. And then also, like, the more time that you just give your child, like, undivided moments of just, like, totally you, and, like, having so much fun and joy with them, and, appreciating them, they don't care when you're like, okay, I gotta, like, go do me for a little bit. They're like, okay.
All right, peace, bro. Like that.
Yeah, they feel cute.
Nemo again, and I'm gonna go take a look.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Exactly.
no, totally. It's funny because it's such a common theme with moms and working with clients and people all the time, where it's just like people do not understand what they're sacrificing by not taking time for themselves, and they think they're showing up for everyone in their lives and that there's some martyr. It's like, you are not giving them the best version of you if you don't give time to yourself as well.
Yeah.
So it's like you take time away from them, but the quality of time that you are giving them and the quality of yourself you're giving them when you show up is so much higher that it doesn't matter. It's like, yes, take some time for yourself, put on a movie if that means that when you are then with your kids, you're going to be fully present instead of some psycho perfectionist trying to be there 24/7 or helicopter mom. It's like, then they are intuitive sponges too, that know when you're around them and you're like low grade or borderline nervous breakdown, or if you're fully present with them,
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely. Yeah. And it's like, if it's going to make you feel better to like, work an extra couple hours or whatever, like, it really doesn't matter in the whole scheme of things. It's like, you really got to do what makes you feel good, like, as a parent, for sure.
Yeah, 100%. I always tell people it's better to take the time you need for yourself. You're doing other people a disservice when you don't take time for yourself, because you're showing up for them as a lesser version of yourself than when you take time for yourself, and you only say yes when you can really commit to things and you get to be there as the highest quality version of you, as opposed to some burnt out, strung out, I can't say no to anybody. But so many people struggle with that. It's such a common thing.
I definitely have, like, in the past, for sure. And then I've gotten better about it. And then I had full-on regression when I had my son.
Yeah, it's like people pleasing and also just like not saying no. And it's kind of an ego fueling thing too, that you're always there to help people or whatever. And it's not helpful, because then usually what ends up happening is probably some breakdown where no one knows what is wrong with you.
Yeah, totally.
I've been overextending myself for so long that now I'm just losing my shit. So ultimately it's like a preventative measure.
And it also like takes away like positive energy that you could be giving to like your partner or the people that are like the closest to you, that are appreciating you and that do want to give you what you're giving them, like usually there's not enough to give them. You're giving it to them,
Yeah, if you're giving it to everyone and it's taking it away from the few that really matter. I know I did that for so long, where I would always just, anyone who wanted to hang out or spend time with me, I was like very liberal about giving my time to different relationships in my life. And that's one thing. And I guess we can move into sober curiosity now. But one thing in deciding to go alcohol free was just boundaries around that shit. Because I realized, okay, I don't even really like half the people that I'm like saying yes to. I don't resonate with these people. Like, why am I choosing to just give my time freely to anyone that asks me to do something? And once you start to enjoy your own company, you're not trying to constantly distract yourself or like fill your time. It's like my time is valuable and I want to focus it on the relationships that find me valuable and only those, and use discernment around that. And so you were definitely a big inspiration for me in kind of deciding to drink less and then give up altogether. It's crazy. It's been almost 3 years this year.
Dude, congratulations. You're rocking it. You're killing it, girl. Killing the game out there.
Yeah, it's been like 10 years over here.
No, man. No, definitely not.
You started, I remember you just kind of gently started stepping away from alcohol a little bit. Gentle.
Yeah.
Tell me about what catalyzed your own sober curiosity, I guess we'll call it for you, because it wasn't like you gave up alcohol completely, but you really just like rarely drank.
Yeah, I think in high school I was like really, really curious about experimenting with like mind altering substances, and like just I was just really uncomfortable in my living situation with both my parents and like just in my skin and all of it. I just wanted to like feel something else, I guess, you know?
Escapism, kind of.
Yeah, for sure. And so I definitely just kind of did what all the other kids were doing, which was drinking and of course like binge drinking. I just like kind of would take it too far, and I think there was like a time or two where I had I was like taken advantage of one time when I was like blacked out or whatever, and that really just was like a big wake up call for me. And I was like, okay, well, I don't want to black out anymore, like that isn't something that I really want to have happen again, I was like, I touched the stove a little too long there. So that kind of was like, okay, that was like a wake up call and like a turn off. And I just like honestly never really liked alcohol that much, like compared to cannabis. Like I started experimenting with alcohol around the same time I experimented with cannabis, and I just always preferred that over alcohol. And then also like growing up, I was very aware that there's like a lot of generational alcoholism on both sides of my family. Like my grandma, my dad's mom passed away because of, that, and her dad also passed away because of that. And like I said, just on both sides, there's a lot of alcoholism. So I always knew like I was prone to that. Like if, something bad happened, maybe like that might like turn the switch. So I just kind of always tried to like make it a little more off limits with myself, which is weird because, with food, it was like the opposite, So I don't know why I was able to control it like that much with that. And then so that kind of always like took play in it. And then I think when I started more like digging deep and like accepting like the sensitive side of myself and like the psychically sensitive side of myself, and I started like getting into Reiki and everything, I wanted to really like hone in and harness my intuition, and instead of like tamping it down with alcohol, because it's not something that like, makes you super tapped in and turned on to that other side of life, that you can't see. So that I really kind of took I went a little too far with like not wanting to drink or like do anything at all, and I really just like dove into that sobriety thing, and then I kind of balanced it out like in my early 20s, and then like I just kind of like had enough and experimented enough with it where I was like, this just doesn't make me feel good. I don't really like it. I'm just doing it like socially to have fun with my friends, and like everybody just kind of does it,
Yeah, you
because
start to realize,
oh,
right, you start to, once you have the clarity of drinking much less, you start to realize, okay, if I'm gonna have one drink here, that I can do the same thing and have fun without any. And just realizing the programming around it all. But I think it's really insightful of you that you were able to, at such a young age, realize that we had it so much in our family, because I did too, but that didn't stop me. I mean, it was my dad's side, there's a lot of drinking going on there, and my mom my mom struggled with it as well. So it definitely should have been red flags for me, especially because I feel like I drank even more than you did anyways growing up. But it is interesting how you can just rationalize it. And especially with patterns that are normalized, it's easy to think and compare and look around and feel like everyone else is doing the same thing you're doing. But that's where that tuning into your own inner knowing is so important, because it doesn't really matter what anyone else is ever doing if it doesn't resonate with you, and you are honing your intuition and all of those things. When you're really working on developing your intuition, it becomes clear very quickly that alcohol doesn't support that process.
no, any process really, you know what I mean, other than like getting drunk, that's what you want. I mean, and that's fine, and or whatever, having a glass of wine or having one drink, not everybody drinks to get drunk, and that's fair and true. But yeah, it wasn't something that was like making me the best version of me, and I felt like I was doing it really to please other people or to like make other people comfortable socially there, especially at the end of like my drinking. It was like, I was like, why am I doing this? It just felt like that inner knowing of like, just don't do it anymore then, like just stop doing it.
Hmm.
And it's not to say I mean, now I don't do anything, but because I'm pregnant, but it's not to say that I don't partake in anything at all ever, because that's not true. I will have like a drink once in a while or whatever. But I have noticed that it's a lot easier to just have one drink versus like having like three drinks or more or whatever, because that's what everybody else is doing. Now it's like more comfortable for me to just have one or none at all.
Hmm. Yeah, totally. I feel the same way with drinking. I mean, I never drink, and I at all. And I was more of an overindulger, so I just don't even care to test the waters with mindful drinking. But that's what I always encourage people to do within sober curiosities. Like, it really isn't one size fits all, because we're approaching this from the lens of like gray area drinkers, not people in addiction, where there really isn't any other choice besides abstinence. It's getting into the exploration of our relationship with alcohol before that point. And then you have more options to see, like, okay, maybe I am someone who can really infrequently have one drink, or drink really mindfully, or maybe after taking a really long break and really putting alcohol on the peripheral of your life. It's interesting because I find oftentimes when people do that, and they genuinely don't just commit to abstinence, but also making improvements to their life that's perpetuating toxic relationship with alcohol. I mean, you can't just take the alcohol away. If you're someone who drinks dysfunctionally, you have to look at like, why am I drinking dysfunctionally? Like, what areas of my life am I unhappy with and whatnot? But
Totally.
I find a lot of times gray area drinkers, if they take out alcohol long enough, um, and start to really get to the root cause of some of the things they're unhappy with and building the life they really want, alcohol becomes a little irrelevant and you're just kind of like, ugh. For me, I don't ever feel like, oh, I wish I could drink. I never feel that way. I stopped feeling that way after like a year. Yeah, I had passing moments that became less and less frequent, but like now, like, fuck no, I would not even want to like take a chance with a drink because I can drink a kombucha. It's just as fun and I don't feel like shit and don't have anxiety. I can still run my business and not have tons of self-doubt, like all of the things. It's just like, why would I risk the life I've created at this point? And the more time you give yourself alcohol free, the more beautiful of a life you can create and the less interesting it becomes.
1,000,000%, 1,000,000%. I think like, we talked about this the other day, but I think that it's so natural for us to want to do things as humans, like, ingest things ceremonially, like in groups. And it's like, there's so many other things that are actually like beneficial for us to do,
Like those things, yeah.
like eating mushrooms, or like even drinking a kombucha or whatever, or like cacao or whatever, or even like smoking a joint, like you're not going to accidentally like get a DUI because maybe if you smoke too many joints, you might get a DUI.
Yeah, but typically they're not, and even I still think even too, that's why I love Sober Curiosity, is because it provides you that opportunity to be like, what's my intention? Even with weed, like there can be people who definitely, I've had clients where weed is more their issue than alcohol, and they're using the intentionality behind it as what matters. And even for me, when I stopped drinking, I've talked about this before, where I kind of noticed myself smoking more. And I think it was to like bridge that discomfort of the initial stages of being alcohol free. But now, I mean, we're pregnant. So like you said, do anything. But I think now, like, I just don't have any desire to smoke weed more than here and there. And it's like, whereas when I was first like really uncomfortable in my own skin, alcohol free, I was like smoking every day. And now I'm like, oh, take it or leave it. Like it's there. And I mushrooms are something that are fun occasionally, edibles and stuff like that. But I think when you feel something has a pull on you or a charge on you, or you feel like you need it, or the intentionality is to like escape or self-medicate, that's when we should be thinking about it a bit more consciously, and kind of the red flag should be demanding our attention a little more. But I know we're getting close to running out of time, and I wanted to create some space for you to talk about tarot because you have your Instagram account and you do readings. I know you're probably not doing a ton right now because we're like about to go into labor tomorrow. But can you share a little bit about what you do with tarot and kind of what drew you to it, and then we can wrap up with where people can find you?
Yeah, totally. So I've been doing tarot for quite a while. Both of my parents are very intuitive, and they're both very like spiritually open people. So that I like kind of
open rageaholics.
Yeah, spiritually open rageaholic hippies. So that kind of gave me the space and like the mindset to just kind of like, dive into that kind of a reality. But also like there, was a lot of passing in my family before I was born. So I was really kind of like always curious about the other side, and like, what happens when somebody passes away? Like, how do I want to be connected to them, And so I had that. And then also I'm somebody that has, for whatever reason, I don't know if this is connected to my childhood or whatever, but my foundation with my parents and my curiosity, but I've always, I've had a lot of paranormal experiences, like with the other side, a lot of like very unexplainable experiences, and that I was really kind of uncomfortable with for a long time. And then as I got older, I grew to become more and more comfortable and more curious about it. And one tool that I started using was tarot. And it was kind of like, it just always worked. It always gave me the message that I needed in that moment or that I was seeking. You know, I really do think that our loved ones are all around us, along with other spirit guides that want to give you messages, you know, that are trying to give you messages. Your higher self, you know, is constantly trying to give you higher messages. And, you know, when we meditate, it might pop up in our mind, or when we we might have an epiphany when we're like hiking or something. And sometimes you can't like always, you're not in the mood to meditate, you know. You just want the answer. So that's when tarot kind of like really is helpful. And it's like where I fell in love with it, you know.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so you do one-on-one readings.
I do one-on-one readings, and I do readings on my Instagram. You're more than welcome to go check them out if you want to. My tarot Instagram page is My Tiny Wisdom. And I'm also on TikTok. And you can find my personal Instagram page on my tarot page. And if you would like a reading or curious or want to know any more about it, you feel free to reach out to me via Instagram, and I'd be more than happy to talk to you.
Yes. I know. I love tarot cards. It's like a fun kind of ritual to and to dive in a bit more is kind of cool and fun. And
wait, honestly, I could talk for like an hour about like how I got into tarot really, and how like I, you know, like all the crazy weird experiences that I had.
I know.
You know, that
we'll have to do a second podcast on just tarot cards.
Yeah, for sure.
Yes.
I see a future podcast.
I see a future podcast dedicated to tarot. Well, before we wrap things up, I always like to add, and again, My Tiny Wisdom on Instagram is Alexandra's Tarot Card Instagram. And then My Tiny Van Life is her personal one.
Yes.
We didn't even get into parenting and van life. Shit. They have a brick and mortar home now, though. So, and TikTok, it's My Tiny Wisdom as well.
Yes.
Okay, cool. Got that, everyone? Good. And then I wanted to end on, you know, what is your best advice for new moms, pregnant moms, aka me? And yeah, what do you think is like your best advice to end on?
Well, be gentle. Gentle with yourself. No, I'm just kidding. But also serious. You got this. The best advice that I can give any pregnant person is like, just do what feels right to you, you know, like whatever, just follow your intuition, and like, it's going to lead you in the right way. Like if something feels wrong or uncomfortable, or like something's upsetting you, like it feels wrong, it's upsetting you for a reason, you know, and like, do what feels right to you. Don't do anything to make anybody else happy, or like don't choose, you know, any kind of like choice that you have in your pregnancy or in motherhood. Like don't do anything to make someone else happy, because you're just going to regret it. And you know your child best. Like you're going to know what's best for your child. Like every child is so different. And so of course, like every mother's experience is going to be different for a million reasons, but the biggest one being your child is so different than that person down there, or like our children are going to be different, like,
Yeah.
so what works for me will probably not work for you. And like what worked for my first son will probably not work for this next baby,
Mm-hmm.
Just go with the flow. Just trust yourself.
Yeah.
You got this. Every mom knows how to be a mother, like
deep down, hopefully.
Yeah.
If they've done their trauma breaking cycle, their inner work. Otherwise,
yeah.
Who knows? But no, I'm just kidding. But seriously, I would say I don't even know. I'm like all new to this, but my first lesson I've learned so far is one that I've learned in life, I guess, and I really try to be discerning about who I take feedback from and consider the source, because I feel like having kids is something everyone does, and then everyone feels entitled to give you their opinion on it. And so I've like learned that my biggest takeaway is that I'm not giving anyone any advice unsolicited, especially pregnant people. I will not be informing them about my labor and delivery when they're like pregnant.
Please.
Yeah.
Please don't.
Yeah. I'm like, wow, like, a lot of people do that. It's just like, dude, what? Read the room. I'm about to go into labor. I do not want to hear about that. But no.
I say, for anybody that is around somebody who's becoming a first-time mother, do not share your terrifying, traumatic birthing experience until after they've had their baby.
I'm all ears after. I'm all ears. But I think that's like one big takeaway is when you're a beginner, it's like you take everyone's advice equally almost just because you've never done it before. But it's like, well, everyone does this. So everyone then feels like they are credible for giving feedback, which they are, but it's also like you're not everyone. And so I really try to think like, do I admire this person? Do I admire their parenting styles? Do I aspire to be like them? And so then I just take it with a grain of salt based on what my answers are internally. Like, okay, thanks for the feedback,
Exactly.
But like I think we're really different. So
that's your gut instinct, like if you're like, your little radar is going off and you're like, that doesn't sound right. Like, it's probably not right for you,
Right, for you. And it could be for someone else. No judgment. The one thing I did say, I was just talking to my friend about this the other day. I'm like, I've learned that I'm just going to be here to support my pregnant friends and ask like what they need. I'm not going to go into like my experience,
unless it's asked for.
Right. But the one thing I will be like, do your research if you are going through the hospital system on every procedure.
Yes.
Trying to make you do.
Yes.
You might be surprised, honey. You might be surprised some of these things they be doing up in there.
Okay. You want to be informed. You're giving birth in the hospital for sure.
Mm-hmm. Even talking to my midwives when I did do my research and sharing, why do we do this on the day of birth? Why do we do that? Like, this seems unnecessary. These are certified nurse midwives working in the hospital, and they are agreeing. Like, it's not just me. So it's like, there's a lot of procedures and testing and medical,
a lot of it's outdated.
Interventions that are given that even people within the profession themselves agree aren't necessarily needed or healthy.
Yeah, they're based on such small statistics of people that,
Right. It's umbrella, like out of abundance of caution, but there's also risks too. So just that's what I would say is like, I have no input. Enjoy your experience, and everyone's is different, but be your own advocate. And with that, I am so happy you came. This is so fun. We'll do another. Yay, girl. We got a month to go. We gonna be good. We got 2 little crazy gremlins coming our way.
2 crazy gremlins.
All right. Love you.
Love you.
Bye.